Hey everybody, welcome back for another edition of the Club Cool podcast. I'm your host, Barrett Dudley, and I'm here in the very, very spooky Washed Media Studios. You can tell that tomorrow is October. I am surrounded by cobwebs and dangerous crime scene tape and a spooky skeleton, and there's a thing in front of me that I think does something with the lights, but they have it on child mode for us here on Club Cool. But it's good to be here. Today, I am joined by returning guest, second time. It's Clayton Chambers from the Sprezza newsletter. What's up, Clayton? It's good to have you.
Howdy, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
This is the two-peat.
It's the two-peat, yeah. And I think you're our first repeat guest that's not like within network. That's not a fellow podcast person here at Wash Media. So you're making history here today, and you should feel great about that.
Honor. I feel really good about that.
Last time we had you in studio because you lived in Austin. You've been on.
That's right.
You've been on a bit of a journey since then. You had a quick stint in Los Angeles,
to say the least. Yeah.
And now now you're at home in Nashville. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, we sort of just made the Great American Road Trip there and back this summer, and wound up in Nashville.
Man,
so it's good times.
Did you find yourself on Route 66 at any point?
Honestly, I don't really trust that road for safety.
Is that right?
Measures, but we did drive alongside it for long stretches. Austin actually has this really cool route as you kind of head northwest through like the Texas Panhandle, and then you get into New Mexico, Arizona territory. It takes about 12 hours to get from Austin to Albuquerque, and I did a lot of road trips back and forth over the last year. And New Mexico sort of became like the second home.
Okay.
Which was really cool. So it takes about 12, 13 hours to get to New Mexico, and then another, God knows how long.
Most of that is
LA,
just driving through Texas, isn't it?
It's a journey just driving through Texas.
Yeah.
Because there's a few routes you can take. You can either, again, do the Panhandle one, or you can take I-10 out like all the way west.
Yeah.
Through El Paso and some of those other spots. But it's not road trips are not for the faint of heart. I feel like that was a big pandemic thing for a lot of folks.
Yep.
Who had maybe they're coastal people and they just never had the chance to like see America,
experience the heartland.
Yeah, I think we're all road tripped out at this point.
Yeah. My issue with road trips is that like I'm very prone to getting car sick, which means that I have to drive. And then, and so then I'm just the only person driving. And I don't know. We talked about I tried to make a couple spur of the moment ones happen over the last 18 months, but that doesn't really work out when you have, the dog makes that especially tough. And also one of the ones that I tried to pull off was like during the snowpocalypse here. So it was ill-conceived, but I didn't do any road trips as it happens, but they sound good. They sound very glamorous and cool and
in theory
and Western theory. And like I was trying to get out to Marfa and do that whole thing, but
I could see you doing the fix up an old like beater pickup truck and do the drive out west. Land in Marfa for like some vintage rug.
Very Instagram worthy.
Exactly.
Clayton, you should do for the Sprezza newsletter. You need to do top 5 cars to take on a road trip west.
Honestly, man,
number 1, Subaru Outback.
Number 1, Subaru Outback. Number 2, car of the South. Toyota Land Cruiser. Number 3 would be like. I feel like we gotta have a truck in there.
Yeah. I liked your idea of just an old, vintage restored pickup.
Honestly, I'd go Bronco.
Yeah, Bronco.
Like a vintage,
you can kind of
take the
back off
or
of a Bronco
or something.
Yeah. But speaking of Sprezza, what's going on over there? You're still dropping content like it's hot.
Still dropping content like it's hot. Things are good. It's fun, man. But I've only been writing for about a year. And I mean, you've been doing this for much longer on the audio side, but you kind of look back after a big chunk of time and realize like how much you've grown and matured just through the the process of creating content.
Yeah.
And I think it's been cool to kind of look back through the last year and see just how much has changed. You know, from my side, I've been working on trying to connect the cultural dots between clothing and how it kind of expands into other areas, right? Whether it's like sports and music and entertainment and that sort of stuff. And then recently I made been making these like seasonal guides. So I did one for outerwear. So, you know, just curating different pieces, whether it's like essential pieces or seasonal one-off stuff, or honestly, like iconic pieces that you probably couldn't find anywhere else, and just curate it all in one big guide and then share it with the people. So I did that for outerwear. And then I just did one the other day for knit caps, like beanies.
Yep.
And then socks. So I'm just going to keep making the rounds through different categories. I find that like fun and therapeutic. And a lot of people have been digging them too.
Yeah, I think those guides are always super helpful. And when I have written stuff in the past, it's sometimes I like get in my own head about writing like, you know, listicles, because when you put out an editorial like that, that kind of, you know, you can have a story, you can have a through line, you can have a main topic that you're talking about, but when you're kind of but in the end you are doing some type of list, and I always worry about that, but I think that it just suited for talking about clothing and talking about, you know, something where there are lots of different options. Your newsletter always hits my inbox, and it always looks really good. It always looks really consistent. And then you talked about your writing, and while I'm sure you've grown, I think your voice has stayed really consistent. And I know you personally, so I can hear you when I read the emails. But I do think that, like, even for people that have never heard you talk or that don't know you personally, like, you definitely have a distinct sound with your writing, and I think that's important. So, I love getting that stuff. I missed the knit cap one though, so I'm curious. You've got on an IME one right now, which is probably I think that
it's Ame Barrett, actually.
Tell me what I waffle back and forth. I just say all the different ones. I say Ame and IME. What I've never heard Teddy say it. What is it?
I think that's probably on purpose, but I think it's Ame Leon Dor. It's funny too.
So it's like a soft. Account.
What's
that? A soft A?
Ame. Yeah.
Ame?
I mean, I'm no French speaker, but you know.
Yeah.
I think Ame stands for love, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, that's as far as I got. But there's this funny Instagram account. It's like insider shit posting, based kind of out of New York City. You've probably seen it. It's called Nolita Dirtbag. And
okay.
he basically, I don't know if it's a he or whoever it is really good at just like ironically curating just all the weird stuff about New York, like Nolita culture.
Yes.
Like South Manhattan style culture, whether it's like the restaurants or the bars or the designers and like all the different characters you kind of see. And on their like bio on Instagram, it's like in all caps, it's Ame Leon Dor, you idiot.
With like the pronunciation like, listed.
It's so on point. Yeah, that's like his thing. But I feel like a lot of people get the pronunciation.
Yeah, I was not joking. I go back and forth between like Ame, and now I was wrong both times maybe. So I'll have to switch it up again. But okay, so that's a pretty basic like cuffer knit beanie, likely acrylic. I'm curious, what did you kind of toss out there as like other options? I know that's like a very standard classic kind of, feels like what's hot right now, but it also feels like that's the only thing that brands are kind of putting out is like an acrylic logo beanie, basically with a cuff.
I have a lot of different options that I like to break down into. Some are kind of by style, so like the way you wear the beanie. Some are by color. Some are by like, I like to think of like hats and the other items by like what they're connected to. Like culturally, I feel like film and movies like influence so much of like our nostalgia around what people wear.
Yeah.
And, I think specifically around the 90s, like 90s style does that for us. Like when you look at old pictures of like Johnny Depp or young Brad Pitt or like airport style. I think like GQ had an article about that a few years ago, just curating like how nostalgic airport 90s style was for us. So I draw a lot of inspiration from that stuff, and I think it's really cool to keep that in mind as you think about style and just how it changes, but also how like certain things come back in waves. But in terms of the different styles, man, one thing that I really like about knit caps is the like iconic red watch cap. And you can read this if you come and see the post. But like the first one I talk about is Jacques Cousteau, the French like sea explorer, who was like always repping the red beanie like everywhere, all weather, like all environments. Like he was always like wearing like usually like a blue shirt or whatever. Even if he's like shirtless, he'd probably have like a red knit cap on. And I just think that was super dope. And then when you see like it played out in the movies with Bill Murray,
sure,
and Wes Anderson's Life Aquatic. Shout out to UT Austin. But Bill Murray's rocking the classic Jacques Cousteau red cap, and I was like, that's so dope. And so I just like curate a few different brands and different price points that you could rock with. So like Knickerbocker, like they have like a $40 one. Rototo is like another Japanese brand that I actually really love. And then Gia Cashmere is this brand. It's like an Italian brand. The dude who owns it is Italian as well, but he's based out in California. And so, yeah, just stuff like that. Another one I did too, just since we're riffing on it, is like explaining Carhartt and like the significance of Carhartt. And like you see people rocking Carhartt jackets, like the Detroit style rough and tough jackets, but also like the beanies everywhere. Like Nas, for instance, is like notorious for his love with Carhartt. You see Tupac and Rihanna and like all these different characters and figures and entrepreneurs rocking it. But it's fun to see like Carhartt's place where it used to be like a blue collar brand, right? It used to be for like farmers and truck drivers, and then like hip hop artists and people in Europe sort of like took and repurposed the brand over time. So that's kind of the gist.
Yeah. I love the connection to various eras and times in history, and just the way you connect it to movies and stuff as well. If you're not already signed up for the newsletter, you got to check it out. You got to get subscribed. It's very easy. Just go to Sprezza. That's SPREZZA.XYZ. Drop your email there, and you'll get all this great content. Clayton, I always love asking people that don't live in Austin, about the style scene and the culture scene in their own city. So, you as I mentioned up top, you had a little bit of time in LA and now you're in Nashville. So I'll start with a question about Austin. Is there anything you miss, having not been here for the last half year, basically? Maybe
I'll
less
be
than
real.
that. It might only have been a few months.
I don't actually miss Austin too much, but
I appreciate the honest answer.
I was thinking about for Austin folks. I was thinking about Swedish Hill Bakery actually this morning, and I was like, damn, I could really, really go for like one of their pastries.
Yep.
So many good joints. I do miss parts of Austin. I think I miss like the food and beverage culture in Austin more than I do like the style. I didn't really get attached too much to like clothing or style per se, but man, yeah, so many good restaurants.
It's a really it's a weird city as far as style goes, and I know it's like as the city grows and becomes a larger and larger city, and as more people move themselves here from places like New York and California, I'm not actually sure that it'll really shift much, because I actually think that those people will kind of acclimate and start changing their own style to fit more of what we do here, which is like very, very, very casual almost everywhere. And we talk about topics on the pod, and every once in a while we'll talk about a trend and we'll kind of label it as like a New York or LA trend only, because it'll be the type of thing that is just like, it's either not functional here because of the way that we drive cars, or it's just like, it's not something that would even be remotely understood. And so it's a difficult place to like, find inspiration at least, or even like the opportunity to kind of like do a lot of individual self-expression. The weather also plays a major role in that.
Well, one thing I actually, looking back on now, had realized about Austin style is just the connection to nature and style. So like dressing functionally, not like gorpcore per se, but I feel like actually Howler Bros reflects this pretty well, right?
Yep.
But there's this sort of unique like Southern Texas mix of like Western, but also outdoor, but also a little granola,
Yep.
like style that's like made for, hey, we're gonna drive to the beach, or hey, we're gonna go paddle boarding, or hey, we're gonna go for a hike. Like it can kind of blend into different activities, and it still it's like it's not athleisure, it's not gorp, but it's like it's made for function, but it still feels like maybe a level above what like athleisure would feel like.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great insight there. So let's just compare this to the place you're in now, Nashville. I think when I think about Nashville, typically I think about like what it is, Broadway Street, right? Is that is that what it's called? The one.
Oh yeah.
So
honky tonk bars and stuff.
It's the honky tonk bars. Nashville is obviously where like a lot of the big country musicians live. It is Tennessee, so it's got a bit of the South, but has the Western flavor as well. But at the same time, like, I'm pretty sure Double RL has a store there. Faraday just opened a store there. I think you have an Imogene and Willie. So you do have some of that, like, you've got some of that kind of same kind of Western, but also kind of crunch that like a store like Stag Provisions represents really well. So what have you kind of found there as far as the style scene? Like, is it as heavily Western as some of us might imagine it to be, or do you see some interesting stuff out there?
Yeah, I think music you can't really underplay like how much of an influence music has had on the way that Nashville style feels. I wouldn't really classify it as Western. I'd probably classify it as definitely more Southern, which, a lot of Southern style to me is either a cross between like this blue collar Americana style or like prep wear. And in Nashville specifically, like, you see a lot of the, like, first off, there's a huge vintage culture here. Vintage reselling, like whether it's t-shirts, band t-shirts are huge. Vintage Levi's, cowboy boots, cowboy hats, Western shirts. Yeah, like all of those are just like key, highly sought after items here. And yeah, dude, like I live in an area called East Nashville, and there's this main road that sort of runs through it called Gallatin. And along Gallatin, it's like, dude, there's every other block, it feels like there's a vintage shop. And it's all like really good stuff. Like they're not skimping. Like they find it in good locations. The prices are fair. And I think if you were to really explore Nashville, especially on the east side, you have lots of artists who come here, right? Whether it's like creatives for like photo and video, or like graphic designers or musicians. So much of their style is influenced by vintage. And so I think that's a really like kind of foundational thing to know. There's definitely like the more upscale and retail side of things too. So there's another area of town called 12 South, and 12 South has like a lot of the sort of like newer, more well-known D2C like consumer brands that you would know, like Marine Laird's there. Buck Mason's going to open a location. Madewell, Outdoor Voices and Faraday, like they're all along it. But 12 South, is probably one of the more like touristy areas. And it used to be, I mean, this is similar to South Congress, right? Like South Congress used to maybe feel a little more localized, and now it's like insanely commercial. There's a Soho House there, and it's like,
and also every store you just mentioned, which also all of those stores also exist on like the same block in Williamsburg as well, on one of the intersections. But it's Buck Mason, Marine Lair, Madewell, Allbirds, like Outdoor Voices, they all
Reformation.
They're I don't know if they're all using like the same commercial real estate people, or if they're just it's something is unified there, where they have like the same real estate analysts being like, okay, this is the spot. And then they all just flock there. You got to throw in at least like 2 mattress or sheet stores as well. Get yourself
shout out to Parachute.
Yeah, Parachute, Casper, Tufted
Brooklyn.
Needle. You got to get a couple of those in the mix as well. It's it's so nice. Funny, like those, you know, they got some good stuff in there, but it is also really kind of like you just kind of grit your teeth when you look up and you're like, ugh, this is available literally everywhere now. So it's
taking up valuable real estate, and I think Nashville is lacking a like proper local menswear store that has like good curation and selection of brands. Modern and contemporary brands. They do have a sneaker shop called Rooted, which has this sort of like Kith-esque feel to it, but they actually carry quite a lot of like luxury brands that I think are really interesting, and sell some like pretty nice exclusive sneakers as well. So I think they do a really good job. Imogene and Willie is the sort of like landmark brand in Nashville. They've been around, I think, since 2007 or 8. And I mean, that the backstory on that brand is, it's a husband and wife duo. I think they're both from Kentucky, and the wife grew up working in an old Levi's, like a regional Levi's factory. So she grew up understanding like denim and manufacturing and like cutting and sewing like denim garments, which is actually really dope. And so she just applied that knowledge more creatively to Imogene and Willie, which, you know, became their brand, where they were making like fine denim, selvage denim and stuff like that. And that brand's evolved a little bit over the years. They've kept that like main location, but they're selling like a lot online too. And I think it's a fascinating time to see what they're doing. But yeah, outside that, man, the scene is a little sporadic. I think you also see, because again, there's like so many creative folks here too, like designers, photographers, again, entertainment and music people, like, you know, there's some streetwear influence. There's a lot of like gorpcore stuff. So you'll see guys wearing like baggy, like, or slow trousers with like Solomon, like hiking shoes, like an oversized t-shirt and like a Carhartt hat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like that kind of style.
That's, I mean, if you have noticed that in Nashville, then it's, I mean, like that, because you just described stuff that I just don't feel like I ever see here, ever. It's just too... You know, and it's,
part of that's weather, though, man. I really think part of that is weather.
It is. It is very. I just drove over here, and when I got in the car, the temperature was reading. I mean, it wasn't, but it was reading it at 112 degrees, and we're here in October. So yeah, I mean, what is? Are you? Is it cooling down there? Are you just like? Is it almost time to really start dressing in Nashville?
It comes and goes. Right now it's actually still in the 80s, which is not ideal, but in the next week or so it should be like cooling down for good. So like daytime it'll be like low 70s, and then at night it'll cool down to like the 50s. So it's definitely bonfire weather coming up soon. I'm going to get a fire pit, which is going to be great, and put some little patio furniture out there in the backyard, and have some friends over for food and drink, you know.
That sounds nice, man. You actually, I've been seeing a lot of good food on your gram, man. I think
I cook a lot.
You mentioned, I think, Lebanese cuisine last time you were on the show. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what? Yeah. Was I seeing some Lebanese cooking there?
I do. Yeah. I love Mediterranean and Middle Eastern style food, and my wife is part Lebanese, and so I've learned a lot from like her family about cooking different dishes and how to kind of prepare them. And so even tonight I'm actually going to make a Lebanese dish. It's called majedra, which is basically like lentils, rice, caramelized onions, some pine nuts and stuff like that. But it's funny because you see it in restaurants, and my wife will joke, like, growing up she ate like tons of Lebanese food, and like none of it was sexy. It was like, oh, if you were to eat a dish like majedra, it's like, oh, it's like low key, like kind of gross. and then we were at this Mediterranean restaurant in town the other night, and they have majedra on there.
Okay.
Like on the menu, and it's like one of the most like ordered items.
Yeah.
And she's like, y'all don't even know. Like, you think this is some cool dish, but like if you had to eat it every night for like growing up, it doesn't hit the same anymore. So
lentils are like, you know, that's a hot legume right now, I think. But You gotta. I hope you got the lentils going. They go on the stove for hours. I feel.
Yeah, it's a long cook. So
are you when you're cooking this way? Are you just like in there, just like whipping it up, going off the cuff, or do you have some? Can I drop some recipe links in the pod description today?
Oh shoot, you definitely should, man. I do actually have some solid recipes and stuff. Yeah, I try to prep. Like prep, I feel like when you're cooking is the most important part to get right. Just because if you don't, you'll end up in a hot kitchen.
That's what I do. I just
friends are over.
I get in there and I just start going as quickly as possible. And I always wish that I had taken the time to
you got to
prep it.
Yeah, like so last night I made some Thai food, and I mean, like just the chopping alone is like the main piece. If you get that right, then you can just dump it in and like set your temperatures to what you need. But like all you have to do is just mix the ingredients and yeah, prep is good. I'm gonna work on man, I'm gonna make some venison hand pies at some point here soon, which is kind of like an Appalachia thing.
Okay. I've definitely never had a venison hand pie, but you know.
Yeah, it's like minced meat pie.
Yeah. Are you gonna be rolling your own pastry dough there?
Gots to, man. Yeah.
Okay, this is next level. I thought I was in the cooking kitchen, but you're putting me to shame. I also know you're kind of a morning routine guy. You like your coffee. Did I catch a fellow kettle in your stories? Because we just got one of those, and I've always been just like a Cuisinart coffee maker guy. Like load it up. I've joked about being a GSG, a grocery store grinder, as far as my beans, but I'm about to get a. I also now that we got this fellow kettle, I'm saying the brand of a kettle. It looks all cool and designery. The brand is Fellow, and you can get a whole bunch of like coffee grinders and stuff from them. I've heard mixed reviews, but so I think I'm just gonna get one that I've also talked about before called a Baratza, the Encore grinder. But what? Any other tips and tricks for a pour over? Because I think I'm about to enter that world.
It's a wonderful world. It's hard to go back. Although I do appreciate a good like cup of like diner like
just some drip
coffee.
Yeah.
I like the slowness to it, and I'm the same way with cooking food too. So I appreciate things kind of moving slowly because it forces me to like actually enjoy the process of it rather than just like shove it down your throat.
Yeah.
But with coffee, yeah, man, the fellow products are great. I think they're pretty well known right now because they have like a lot of like matte textured products.
Yep.
So like you can get these like matte black like kettles or tumblers. The tumblers are really, really dope. They keep your stuff warm for a super long time, but they're just like super sleek and plain looking. They have all sorts of different colors. But yeah, the kettle's cool because you basically like have this dial that you can like switch the temperature, any temperature that you want, like 100 degrees. You can do 180 if you don't want it to be boiling too hot.
Yeah.
And you can also set it to boiling. Like you set it, and then like in 30 seconds, it's like there. So it's pretty rad. And yeah, I had the Baratza, the grinder, which is also really nice, and I've been using that for about almost a year. And then for the actual pour over equipment, I just use a simple product called the Kalita Wave. That's Kalita, and it's just this little like pour over topper.
So it's not like the Chemex setup then.
Yeah, not as big as the Chemex.
Okay.
I mean, you could fit it in like a big jacket pocket. It's pretty small.
Oh, nice.
But you put the filter over, and then you need to have a scale, obviously, to like measure.
So straight it goes straight into your cup, into your mug?
Yep. Yeah. Totally. You can do that, or if you have like a pour over cup that you use to serve in 2 cups, you can do either one. But I like it a lot. It's really simple. But it really brings out like the flavor in the coffee.
Yeah, whenever I order like a pour over at a funky coffee shop, it really does, like, it's next level. it's next level stuff.
You've probably seen it if you go. You've probably seen it if you go to like maybe a more specialty shop. I mean, the thing it's not good for is larger groups. So if you're doing like holiday hosting,
making a lot of coffee,
breakfast or whatever, you're making. You need the pot.
Yeah,
you really need to go on Mr. Coffee style.
When you do one, so start to finish, like one pour over coffee, how long does that take?
Like 3.5 minutes.
Okay,
3.5 4 minutes.
Yeah, so it's not too bad.
No, it's super manageable.
Yeah. Because that's the one thing that I'm worried about is that, you know, your Cuisinart, your Mr. Coffee is so easy to just hit the button and forget about it. But like you still have to like scoop the coffee and measure and do the water and the thing. And so like it's like that part of it, you know, hitting the grinder and measuring a little bit on the scale is like not that's kind of, you know, that's a wash there. The part that like I was curious how long you're just kind of standing there pouring the hot water in a spiral, you know. Make it art.
It's a lot less time than people actually think. So, I wouldn't get too hung up on it. I mean, there's different ways you can use it. Chemex is fine. The Kalita Wave's cool. I just got this other like Japanese style pour over set from Kento, which is another like Japanese brand, and they make really cool coffee and like homeware, glassware products.
I've checked them out and talked about them a little bit, either on a Patreon editorial or here on the pod. They do some really cool stuff as well.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I definitely want to get an actual coffee pot at some point, just because like hosting more people got to have that extra bean juice. But you know, for now, I'm gonna stick to my pour over.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna get some recipes from you, and we'll drop them in the description for the podcast if you wanna.
Let's do it.
If you want to try your hand at Majedra. Am I saying that right?
Majedra.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and hear from today's sponsor. And then when we get back, I've got some suiting questions. And you know, it's wedding season part 2. It's the fall wedding season. And we've got some listener questions and like I said, I've just got some personal ones that I'm going to shoot your way. So we'll be right back.
Let's go.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Fast Growing Trees. When is the perfect time to plant trees and shrubs? Well, if you go to a big box store and talk to their experts, they'll probably tell you anytime or, great question. But the best time to plant is actually fall, which means now is the time to go to fastgrowingtrees.com. Yes, skip those big box stores, head to fastgrowingtrees.com. It's the world's largest online nursery. This means no more waiting in lines, no more having to put a tarp down in your car so it doesn't get covered in soil and all messy, no more digging through a lackluster selection. I can't tell you how many times we've gone looking for lavender. Well, guess what? There's no lavender. Of course there's not. Just go to fastgrowingtrees.com and choose from thousands of varieties of trees, shrubs, and plants expertly curated to thrive in your area and delivered to your door in 1 or 2 days. So whether you're looking for shade, privacy, fruit trees, or just added color for your yard, every plant is shipped with a well-developed root system ready to explode with new growth come spring. We've got a couple of new planters right out front. You know, they're right on the facade. They're our showcase planters. Fast Growing Trees had exactly what we were looking for. We got beautiful pampas grass, came in a couple of days, ready to drop in and plant. It's going to look beautiful out front. We love Fast Growing Trees because the selection is phenomenal and it comes right to your door. I don't have to worry about going to those big box stores like I mentioned. Now I only do plant shopping at fastgrowingtrees.com, and you should too. There's a better way to buy trees, shrubs, and plants for your home and yard, and it's fastgrowingtrees.com. Fall is the planting season. Again, don't let anybody tell you different. Join over 1 million satisfied gardeners at fastgrowingtrees.com. They've got a 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee, which means your plants will arrive happy, healthy, and ready for planting. So now through November 30th, go to fastgrowingtrees.com/clubcool for 15% off. That's 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com/clubcool, fastgrowingtrees.com/clubcool. And by the way, if you're no gardening expert, I do not have a great green thumb. Don't worry, they've got plant care and growing advice at your fingertips 24/7 with live plant experts that are just a phone call away 7 days a week. They've also got indoor plants if you're not looking to spruce up the outdoor, A lot of fruit stuff if you're looking to grow something and be able to add freshly picked produce to your home cooked meals, whether that's avocados or lemons and bananas. They truly have it all. So once again, get 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com/clubcool now through November 30th. All right, and we're back. All right, so Clayton, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but you kind of got your start in this space in men's style and fashion, kind of right at the front of the hashtag menswear era. Am I on point there?
That is correct.
All right, so this is like, kind of early 2000 teens, and like GQ is telling everybody about, how skinny your suit should be, and ties got super slim, and we were
pocket
squares, and also lapel pins, and also a tie bar, and also like, like some Floor Shine by Ducky Brown wingtips with like some crazy ass socks.
Ducky Brown.
And that's
R.I.P. Ducky Brown.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, that has always stayed with me, because that was those were the years that I was kind of getting into this as well, or getting into it more seriously than I ever had been. And so like when I think about kind of like suiting trends, that's always where my head goes. And that because while the kind of the dandyism of it all kind of faded, like, up until the last few years, like we were still talking about, very tailored suits, and like, the ways that you could kind of like be stylish in a suit still felt, of that cloth, if you will. Mm-hmm. And really only recently, last couple of years, especially with like Jerry at Fear of God putting out super boxy, like 90s wide shouldered type stuff, and Balenciaga has done some of it as well. We're kind of opening up the silhouettes of suits again, at least if you're doing them in like a fashiony way. And so that's kind of I think that's where some of this of my suiting confusion comes into play now, because it's like hashtag menswear, like the way to do a suit stylishly is also how you might do it to a wedding, right? But now I've got a wedding coming up here in a couple of weeks. First one I've been to, and I don't know how long. And I'm just kind of thinking like, man, like not only have I not even worn a suit in 2 years now, but I don't even really know like what's what out there. And so I had to pick your brain about this. And so first of all, I'll just start like, is the tailoring and the suiting side of men's style something that you've kind of stayed in tune with?
Yeah, I like you, I had my most impressionable understanding of style kind of built around the hashtag menswear era. And so my foundation will always come from suiting and like how to wear a suit and the different ways to style it. And I think if, that hashtag menswear era was kind of predicated on like, color and sort of boxy chest, wide lapel, pocket squares, no socks, tight pants, like all of that stuff. I think, you'll see some suiting kind of make its way back, but it'll be a lot more of like relaxed fits, better tapers, Neapolitan inspiration, which is just like, Naples style, like Italian tailoring.
Soft shoulders.
You see a lot of that. Yeah, you see a lot of that with tailors like Jay Muser in New York and Sid Mashburn in Atlanta.
Yep.
They have this, particular way of tailoring, but it's really built around like soft shoulders, and you want the shape of the suit to flow without like there being a break, without there being anything like of an eyesore that like catches and be like, oh, that doesn't feel right. And so even the pants, they drape perfectly. You can wear them with socks. You can wear them with no socks. They come just about to the ankle, but there's like a perfect taper to it. It's just like very smooth transitions. So I think that type of suiting is going to be more like popular for folks like going to weddings.
Yeah.
Buying their first suits. There's a lot of like employees who I feel like got their start in the workforce and didn't have to like know what it was like to wear a suit to work. And so, again, going post, through a pandemic, getting on the other side of that, and like changing up your wardrobe. Like the suit is still kind of an essential part to that. And I think maybe in a more like casual sportswear kind of way, like you'll see that like, suit jackets maybe are treated more like chore coats, and that like pants kind of billow out wide a little bit. Like you see Cordor and like Knickerbocker and some of those other brands will make these sort of like wide like leg opening trousers. So they're not really tailored, but they're not baggy either. They kind of billow out a little bit like bell bottoms, but not like that much. And so I think you'll see, more stuff like that. Do you want like specific brands to dive into that stuff, or like any of that?
Well, I like that you're talking about kind of like the overall like direction and trend. So I want to stay there for a second before we get into like specific brands. You mentioned you did mention some good ones, and I'll actually end up mentioning some here as well. When I thought about like it, perfect world, if I was just going to go out and spend money to get it kitted up for this wedding, like I think what I would probably be looking for is still a suit that fits me well, and is tailored, although maybe not as slim as I would have had it cut 5 to 7 years ago. But I'd also be looking for more like, rather than like accessorizing it a lot with the various like accoutrement, it would be more about like color and texture, which is what, I feel like I see at Drake's a lot, or even some of the stuff that Ame Leondora has done with Martin Greenfield out of New York. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go get a new suit. And so my options are like my classic navy and gray. And so I'm trying to what I'm now trying to do is like think about, if your base is still that, like what are ways to kind of like modernize it and make it fun for, a party or a wedding where you're not going to go get like a new funky suit with a new cut.
Yeah.
Like what ties are good now? What's the width of a tie supposed to be now? I don't know any of these things.
Honestly, man, I don't have a fucking clue about that side. That's where I start to get lost again too, where I'm like, part of me just doesn't want to go down that path of accessorizing like that. But two areas where I think it can be fun to accessorize would probably be like what type of shoes you wear, and then what the shirt is, right? So if you're used to just like plain white collar, dress shirt, whether it's a button down or not, maybe instead go for like something more floral, or like, Bodie has a lot of those like really dope like embroidered shirts. They're like funky and colorful, and there's like cool patterns and like styles and patches on there. Yeah. And if you're wearing maybe more of like a plain suit, assuming it's kind of fitted the way you need and want, like throwing in like a colorful shirt would actually be pretty sweet. Blackstock and Weber, the loafer brand, they do a lot of dope iterations on their loafers. They use like crazy exotic skins. He made like denim loafers, suede loafers, and he has the different types, right? You have like Belgian style ones, you have penny loafers. So he kind of runs the gamut of different types. And then within each fabric, like, Throwing Fits, he did the collab with them where they did those like crocodile like maybe that was just suede, but he did crocodile skin loafers, like pony hair ones. He did the J. Crew collab the other day. Yeah, he's just an example of being funky with it. But I think like shoes and shirts, I think to me are probably like, and maybe even go no tie. Like, if you have a wedding, like I actually don't think that's wrong. If you,
I'm glad you mentioned loafers, because I know that is, that's a huge part of men's footwear right now. And while I think mostly like what we see on social media and editorials or lookbooks or whatever is like loafers being worn very casually and even in like a streetwear influenced way, they obviously go with tailoring quite well, and so that's I think loafers with a suit is definitely something that people have always done, but is now essentially right. You're on trend if you do that at the moment. If you go, how about this question? If you do a penny loafer or a kind of a loafer in the vein of the Blackstock and Weber style. Like, then do you need to keep it preppier up top? Do you think that like a penny loafer speaks more to a button down collar and like a rep tie, or can you still do, a little bit more Italian or British tailoring with like a point or semi-spread collar? And
this is interesting that you bring it up, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I don't think this is just like a post-pandemic. Well, maybe it is partially a post-pandemic thing, but also, one takeaway from like the industry and clothing at large and kind of how it influences into different areas of the culture is like, there's no rules anymore, like they've just been totally thrown out the window. And if you want to rock stuff that vintage heads would wear mixed with like what sneaker heads would wear, or if you want to go more tailored, also going, a little more like Western and rugged Americana, like the rules are out the window. You could rock a denim Western shirt with a suit to a wedding and loafers with no socks, and I wouldn't care. And I just think that's kind of where we're at, and it's actually kind of cool because the mixing of all these styles is going to in effect create a new American menswear aesthetic or style, which I think is important for us, because the last wave that we really had of that was like American Prep, American Prep for us was, like the American style, like the loafers and the polo, and, Ralph Lauren had a really big influence with that. And then of course, like we've lived through this era of streetwear with sneakers and hoodies and, stuff like that. But now we're kind of entering a new phase where like all these different styles and like sub styles that have had little moments throughout the last few decades are starting to like combine and mix and match.
Right.
And I think, and so I think, like it's less really about rules of what you can and can't do, and really more about like what you feel comfortable doing. I think there's also like the saying that people will say, like, you have to know the rules to break the rules. And if you kind of grew up in, the last 20 years, knowing some of the rules, right? Like, this is how you dress at school. This is how you go, like, dress for church. This is how you dress, when you go out to dinner. Like, knowing the basics gives you the foundation so that then you can go do what feels comfortable now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my perspective on that.
Yeah. I mean, when I sat down and like kind of like started putting these questions together, and just over the last couple of weeks thinking about this new kind of modern suiting, problem to solve. Kind of what you're saying is where you kind of end up being led, in that suiting wants to be more casual right now, like as everything has become more casual. And at the same time, it is a bit almost like a reversal from streetwear and athleisure, which is like the ultimate in casual. It's sweats and sneakers and hoodies, like you said. Yeah. So it is almost like, well, we want to be casual and comfortable, but now we're ready to look buttoned up and sharp again. And so there is, your suggestions are good ones, right? With like something funky like a Bodie shirt or any number of other brands that you can find out there. Vintage is a great way to go. I know Bodie is price prohibitive. Or a Western shirt, like you mentioned, with which could pair really well with loafers. So I think that all those kind of ways that you can, truly make like suiting your own is definitely like, that's the movement. That's definitely the direction.
Totally.
I'm almost like nervous to do that for again, like this wedding like feels like the first big debut back out in a way. And so for anybody else like experiencing that kind of emotion where you're like, well, I don't know if I just want to like be back on the scene immediately and like look too crazy at this at my friend's wedding.
I think there's a way to blend in, man. I mean, yeah, I would say, if you have a set suit and the fit is kind of where you want it, and you don't want to wear a tie, you don't want to just wear like the classic white shirt, tie. I would take like a silk shirt or maybe just like a linen shirt, camp collar style. It doesn't even have to be long sleeve,
right?
But like just something, tuck it in, and like go no socks with loafers.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to start to. I'm gonna be in the closet this weekend, kind of like looking at what I have to make something work. Having said all that, I do feel, after having researched a little bit, like the white shirt and some type of kind of, dark understated tie in a not super skinny width, but a not like bloated 90s width is also, that feels like the piece of all of this, the piece that will kind of exit the 20 teens as still timeless, I guess I would say.
Well,
and it's like people still have to, because at the end of all this, like there will still be people that have to put on a suit for an interview, right? And that will if you're in line for that type of job where you're wearing a suit to an interview in the first place, like chances are like it'll always be a little bit more conservative like that. But so I think that I think my, the only thing I'm not going to do is put on a ton of accessories. I think that's the that's the one thing that I'm not going to do in a couple of weeks here.
The bracelets have been nailing the coffin. We're putting that to rest.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah.
I like jewelry, like I like a gold necklace, or even I see people with gold chains on the wrist and stuff like that, which I really appreciate. But I tend to keep it probably more minimal than most with the accessories.
I've got a listener question here that fits in with our conversation. So, and it's going to kind of like, we're going to go even more formal here in our thinking. So I'll just read it here. He says, I have a wedding in 2 weeks. It's a destination wedding to San Diego that says black tie preferred. My friends are now all talking about wearing tuxes, but I'd need to rent, which is ridiculous to me for a wedding I'm already buying a plane ticket to attend. Can you give me the full definition of black tie? And would I be an asshole for wearing a blue suit? I have a wedding the weekend before where I'm a groomsman. I was just going to rewear that suit as it's two different friend groups and the suit is tailored. Is our listener going to be an asshole if he wears a blue suit to a black tie wedding?
This classic guy stuff. Killing two birds with one stone. Got the two weddings. Got them back to back.
Yeah.
Got to optimize where you can. Shout outs to that.
I think that's it. Our listener here is probably like in the throes of your mid to late 20s, where you are like suddenly spending all of your disposable income on going to weddings. Yeah. Producer Randy's over here relating. Shouts to producer Randy and all.
No disrespect. It's a tough time in life. You got to please a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So I don't think you're an asshole.
I don't think so either.
I'd go. Yeah. If you need to use, if my recommendation would be if you need the same suit for two weddings, I obviously invest in a nice suit. Make sure it's tailored to like your requirements, if that's something you care about, and then rock it to both weddings,
Yeah. And I mean, he talks about renting, and in almost every circumstance, I would rather somebody wear a suit that is slightly off dress code, but fits them extremely well than like a stuffy, boxy, bastardization of a tuxedo.
I wouldn't rent it. I wouldn't rent it. I'd go. I'd just buy one and go to both weddings.
The other thing here is
no one's gonna know.
That I wanted to just kind of like throw in and mention is that like, black tie does indicate as a dress code. Like it if you want to read up on the history of black tie, you can. But it does technically mean like the either very formal with like a waistcoat and your British version, or American version is like the tuxedo. So we're talking dinner jackets and silk lapels and the cummerbund and all that. But at the end of the day, what it actually says is black tie. And so I've always taken the dress code a little bit literally there. And so a combination that I actually think looks really sharp and that you'll see quite a bit on like red carpets and actors and celebrities wear is a navy suit with a black tie. And that navy and black combination, I think is touchy for some people. It's in that black brown territory. It's like, do these colors go together? But I think that, if everything else is really simple and minimal, that a navy suit, black shoes, crisp white shirt, and a black tie can look really sharp, and you are essentially like abiding by the dress code by having a black tie on. It doesn't have to be expensive either, like just to pull an old relic from hashtag menswear is like the tie bar sells very.
You can get plenty of good affordable options from the tie bar. Yeah, I wouldn't get, honestly, man. I always play those questions about like what to wear by the host. If they request black tie like attire, do what they say. But if it's just friends saying like, hey, we should do this and that to look the part, like you can just tell them to get out of here, because you only need to do what the host says. So, and even then, like if you choose to go the navy suit route, like just wear what makes you comfortable. If you're confident in it and you can rock it, like I think that's the biggest tell for style nowadays, is like, you can basically kind of pull off anything as long as you're like pumped about it, confident in it. And the rules are kind of out the window at this point.
I think that black tie, I think when people put black tie optional or black tie preferred on invitations, like what it's really indicating is that they're taking the event seriously and they want you to take it seriously as well. That it is supposed to be like a fancier evening and it's meaningful and it's a big deal and all of that. And so like, that's kind of what it comes. I think that's kind of what it comes down to as well, is that like, it's almost like they're saying, just please don't wear jeans, So it's like, because if you put cocktail on an invitation, you're going to get a big mix. You're going to get khaki pants and a navy blazer. You're going to get somebody wearing a polo shirt. You're going to get the one dad who like has to wear his jeans or whatever. And so like, that's really it. You're going to be fine in a blue suit. You're like you said, it's tailored. It's going to look sharp, and you're going to fit in just fine. Yeah. I would just keep like since it says black tie preferred, this is like a spot where I wouldn't go crazy with like the funk essentially. So it's really just about like treating the event and, like as you mentioned, the host with kind of respecting their what they're hoping for their event.
Respect the person who's supplying the booze,
That's exactly right. When I was writing all this stuff down last night, and I just like, traipsing across the web, and actually, funny enough, GQ just put out yesterday their like new guide to suits. So they touch on a few things that we mentioned here, but it basically reiterates this thing that we're saying of like, fashion wise, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Like, you are truly making it your own and kind of combining all of these things that we've been experiencing and living with over the last decade. Yeah. Now to talk about brand specifics, they mentioned Stoffa. So you're going to have to correct me on pronunciation here. Stoffa. Yeah, Stoffa. Which I think you turned me on to from the Spreza newsletter. So I did want your take. Any other, kind of under the radar brands that you want to shine a light on for us or talk about?
I mean, I don't
doesn't
think
have to be doesn't have to be suiting,
that haven't already kind of been on the rise. I mean, GQ has a good curation of brands. I'd probably throw in there like Drake. I like Drake's stuff a lot. I think they, similar to ALD, can be premium in their pricing, and maybe the quality isn't
not quite there. Yeah.
Drake's does a good job though, I think, in curation and style and fit, all of that stuff. So I would say Drake's. Ring Jacket is another one GQ threw out there. Ring Jacket's a Japanese brand with Neapolitan tailoring, and so they do a really good job. Actually, the guys who started Stoffa came from Ring Jacket. So
okay,
there's sort of similarity in taste and aesthetic, but I mean, Sid Mashburn's another really good one. I think Sid he's such a menswear veteran who like knows the space, has great taste, an eye for quality and fit and all that stuff. And so
Sid Mashburn is a cool one because I feel like he's been doing that soft tailoring with loafers and a little bit of that like Southern charm for the last 15 years. And it kind of, somehow fit in then, but it also still looks really good now. So he's he is one of those, he's an example of something that has really like, by staying true to like, and not exactly writing all the trends, he's been consistent and really sharp and a great option throughout, essentially.
Honestly, yeah, down to price point too. I think he's a great option. If you're looking for that like equilibrium of quality and price, it's hard to beat those prices, honestly. Yeah. So, that's a great one. Who else is good? I think Todd Snyder does a good job with some suiting stuff. If you want, he's less of like a true tailor, I think, and more like ready to wear stuff at this point. But
sure.
But Jay Muser does a good job too. I think Jay Muser, I met those guys back in the spring when I was in New York, and they're building such a cool community around made to measure and custom suiting, and they're kind of like the cool kids on the block right now. If you're interested in that sort of aesthetic,
okay.
That's Castleberry is good too, because he does like his is definitely a little more. He can get as funky as you want. But if you're looking for like actual bespoke suiting stuff, he's a really, really solid tailor. And that's also in the city too.
That's Jay Muser, JMUESER. If you're trying to,
I think so.
If you're trying to figure that out, I've got it pulled up here. All right, Clayton. There's one more thing that I wanted to talk to you about today. You've kind of been on the cusp here of this like men's rental scene. I know you've talked with us, or at least in the newsletter, about Kicks, I think is called, which is like a sneaker rental, and I think you've also got like a working relationship with Seasons now, which is kind of the main player on the scene, I would say. I'm surprised that this hasn't become like a bigger deal yet. It feels like something that we're at a boiling point and a big desire for, like whether it's Reddit communities or Discords or style forums or podcasts or any, like, it just feels like there are more places to talk about this stuff, and like there are an ever growing number of them. And like, I feel like a lot of dudes have at least a fleeting interest in this. And so it feels like something, this idea of like a Rent the Runway for men, essentially, feels very ripe for really taking off, because it's helpful for guys that want to dip their toes in and experience like more modern or contemporary brands. And it's also helpful for somebody like you or I, who are like, maybe like, we were really interested in all of this, and we want to do more experimentation and be able to try more things and more expensive brands that maybe aren't like 100% accessible to us at this very moment, but could be if we could just, if we could rent. So what's going on with Seasons?
Yeah, man. I'll underscore this by saying I've been able to work with Seasons for the last couple of months, and just the team is stellar. The product they're building is really, it's sort of rare to find a team that is like understands the mass like opportunity there is with this market, has the know-how to like build a product around it, because they built an entire platform. They're not like selling their products on Shopify. They like built an entire platform for themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
Where you can shop for, it's like the custom platform with, reverse logistics and payments and subscriptions and all that stuff. So like the product itself is like a tech product. And then the relationships that they have with the designers, man, like some of the best, up and coming and more established designers right now, whether it's like, Rude or Bodie or Earl or Jacques Muse, Acne Studios, Noah, Our Legacy. Like, just the list goes on. It's insane.
That's a crazy list.
They have like good relationships as a retailer with these brands, and have the ability to get access to the menswear to be rented. And for me, like, I would frame the whole menswear rental conversation around access over ownership. That's the way that I see it. And I think more than ever, the big selling point of being able to rent stuff right now is the ability to have access to something when you want it. And I think that's something we've never had before. The consumers, us, like we're all kind of in charge, with the brands, and the brands more than ever are making decisions based on what we want. And I think that's really cool and telling. And not to kind of make this again about like the pandemic, but like the pandemic just reshaped so many things for all of us, right? How we consume products, how we think about what we want out of life and, you know, out of our day to day. And I think clothing is a big piece to that. Like, you know, how many of us are actually like purged through our closet? How many times did we purge through our closet the last 18 months to get rid of old shit that we don't need, that we don't want? And so there's sort of a blank slate or resetting. And I think the thing that's cool about rental companies like Kicks and Seasons, where you can rent designer menswear, you can rent like super sought after exclusive sneakers, is that you get to like try them before you buy them, essentially. So you get access to the best stuff out there, and you don't have to commit to buying it, even if, and you can rent it for as little or as long as you want, you know, 2 weeks, you know, month at a time. And then they'll just, you know, the Kicks model is a little bit different from Seasons, where it's like both are membership based. So you pay for like a monthly membership or you go annual if you want, but it basically gets you access to this stuff. And then whatever you rent is kind of added separately to your account. For Kicks, it's like, you know, you can pay in levels. There's like 4 different levels. So you can pay $60 a month or $70, whatever it is, up to, you know, X amount in sneaker value. So it could be like $400 sneaker value. So you might be able to rent like 2 pairs of Kicks, you know, for a month at a time.
Okay. Yeah,
I got that sneaker level. And then once you want a more exclusive sneaker, it just drives you up to the next level. So you pay more, but you don't have to pay for the sneaker, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Do on either of these platforms, is there a level of it that is almost working like, you know, like an Affirm or like one of those kind of pay as you go? Like if you rent something from Seasons and you're paying $50 a month for it, like if you just keep it for a year, do you then own it?
Yeah. So Kicks, no. Seasons, yes. It's not like a buy now, pay later model yet. I think they're building that functionality on the payment side. But yeah, you could rent a shirt from Bodie or a jacket from, you know, Wales Bonner for, you know, $60 a month. And you can literally keep it as long as you want, as long as you reserve, because it's all based on reservations. So like you can reserve up to 6 items with Seasons. And they all have different dollar amounts based on the item that you're reserving. But as long as you have your, you know, name under that reservation, it's yours to use for as long as you want. And then any month that you keep it, it's adding to your account. So yeah, you could in theory pay off a jacket that's, you know, $1,900 in like 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, this is I'm cruising on the Seasons website right now, which is wearseasons.com, and it is really like the collection of designers that they've put together here is very, very impressive. As far as like just desirable brands that are expensive and that you know that this would come in really handy for. Like I'm now looking at like cashmere sweaters from Elder Statesman, right? Like a big grail for me, right? And it's interesting because like I don't exactly know what the question that's building in my mind here is, but like a lot of this stuff, Wales Bonner, Bodie, Orally, Elder Statesman, it's like Casablanca. It is it's pretty loud stuff. And so, you know, it is the type of, it makes sense to rent this stuff. Like this crazy printed silk shirt from Casablanca. Like how many times are you going to wear this? But at the same time, like I wonder what, you know, is that a pro or a con for the label?
I think it's a pro for both. Yeah. Both models, man.
Cause like you could have more.
I think for occasions, having items for occasions for me is like the biggest selling point.
Yeah.
Like,
that
you're somebody who wants to flex on your friends. Like, you know, if you got a series of dinners in a particular month, you know, with friends, or you're hosting someone that weekend, or you got, you know, a business trip that you got to take, or you got a wedding or 2 that you got to be at, like you're going on vacation somewhere in Europe. Like these are the moments where it's like, yeah, you're not going to go drop like $3,000 on a bunch of cool items, but if you could rent them for like $40 to $60 each, just for like a short amount of time, that's pretty dope. Like, and then you don't have to have the excess of stuff, and you get to trade them in. You can swap them out with other pieces each month. And then you just kind of keep that cycle going, but it sort of helps you mentally plan like, oh, cool, I have these things throughout the year. I should probably have this membership just to like have access to the stuff when I need it. Cause I don't want to go buy a 700 pair of, or like a $500 pair of sneakers. But like, if I could rent them, if I just had a $60 a month membership and I just rented one pair per month or two pairs, it totally just changes.
It's
changes
also
the
like,
game.
it's closet space too, like how much of my closet is taken up by like sneaker boxes that I'm wearing, once a month, maybe. And so I
think it is. I think we're sort of in the early stages of it, but rental for menswear is going to like change a lot. Around how we consume. Obviously, people are still going to buy both their basics, their essentials, but they're also going to, buy statement pieces. But by and large, I just think like the way that we're living, the way that we're moving, like a lot of remote work is happening. A lot of people are still going to be traveling over the next few years. I think the rise of social clubs, like membership-based clubs, such as Soho House, more of those are going to continue popping up. I think I think just with the rise of all that stuff, it's gonna create a stronger need for people to want to rent things, just so that they know that like mental piece of like when I need it, like I can have access to it, as opposed to having to like think about, oh, I got to go this weekend shopping.
Yeah, two things that you're really like touching on here. One, the idea of like shopping for events, which is something that I have actually just very recently really started to like, with the pandemic, like how much it's kept us at home, except for, when we are, we've got this dinner this weekend. Other than that, we're going to be at home for 6 days in a row. Like, it's you're just out less at the moment. And that has been like, as we're headed into the 4th or 5th season of fashion. And it's like, for a few of those, I've been shopping habitually, like I regularly would. This one, I'm very much trying to like, when I'm shopping for stuff, it's like, okay, but when am I going to wear this? When exactly am I going to wear this? Do I have a dinner to wear this to? Can I wear this to a wedding, to a rehearsal dinner, are we going on vacation? Like really thinking about that. And it definitely relates to like the little bit louder, crazier pieces that you're not just, it's, I'm not talking jeans here. I'm talking like, the vegan leather trousers that I want from Sephir. So it's that's definitely a piece of it. And then just, you talk about Soho House and the membership clubs and like, all of it and the access, like you mentioned, like, we've talked before, Phil and I have, about like how for millennials, like this idea of lifestyle is actually like the most important thing to us. And so it's in that's different than status, for example, or wealth, for example. It's like those things are in the background at this point, where it's like being able to live the way that we want to live, regardless of like, what is lining that, like what the safety net is, what like the ability to like, own buildings 100%. is like far, that's almost like not the goal when they're, and so I think that's why that's playing into this idea of like, there are other ways to achieve the lifestyle you want beyond like, creating generational wealth for yourself, essentially.
Totally. No, that is a marquee, sign of millennials and millennials, on the younger side too. And I think, if you look at retail landscape at large, the rental space is really just it's just a piece to the greater retail pie, but the reality is like, having access to smartphones, using our desktops less, being on the go. Like we've now been conditioned to be able to like find things when we want them, where we want them, on our terms, right? So this would reflect to like what we call omni-channel retail, which is like being able to see shit, on a brand's like own e-commerce store, but also being able to grab it at a retailer, also being able to go to Amazon when you need something. Like there's just so many different touch points for where and how we consume stuff. And I think like, that is becoming more important. And I think brands, even like luxury brands, which you see with Seasons, is like they're going to be willing to, in a sense, give up, like they're taking a risk on their brand equity,
Sure. Yep.
By giving it to another retailer. But I think if you trust that, like in the long run, it's going to meet customers where they want to be met, which is like shopping in different ways at different times, with different methods, like that I think is the smartest thing brands can do, is just be in different places. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, that turned into a far more like profound conversation than I thought it might, but I appreciate it. And, man, I think that's about all the time that we have today. I appreciate your time, Clayton. It was awesome to talk to you as always.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Where can we follow you on social media?
I'm pretty active through email only at the moment.
Okay.
So
sprezza.xyz.
Yep.
Right on.
sprezza.xyz. And read some of the content that I got coming. I usually post like twice a week on the newsletter. So
very cool. Yeah, it's it continues to be something I look forward to having in my inbox. So definitely check it out. And thank you to Fast Growing Trees, our wonderful sponsor today. I can't believe that we have an awesome, we're talking about, buying clothes, but buying plants is also very important to all of our aesthetics. Clayton knows this. He's got beautiful greenery, all up in his home. I've seen it.
Plants are therapeutic, So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also essential to have something in the background of your kit picks as well.
Big facts.
Follow us on Instagram at Club Cool Pod, and thanks again to Clayton and to the Sprezza newsletter. And we'll see everybody next week. Bye bye.